Welcome to the Asset and Liabilities GUS application page presented by USDA's Single Family Housing Guaranteed Loan Program. The training objectives will review each section of the GUS Asset and Liabilities application page, which include assets, REO property, mortgage liabilities, other liabilities, and additional expenses. The Asset section will allow the user to enter the following: Account Owner. Select the account owner from the drop-down box. Asset type. Select the appropriate asset from the drop-down box. Cash value. Enter the appropriate value for the selected asset. The asset value entered must accurately represent the amount of funds that are typically available to the account owner. For example, 401k accounts may only be entered as 60% of the vested balance. Some assets may require withdrawal penalties to be deducted in order to determine the actual amount that may be accessed. Checking and savings accounts must reflect the typical balance available to the applicant. This is typically the average 2-month balance of the account or an alternative documented balance. If a checking or savings account balance is artificially inflated due to recent deposits, tax refunds, etc., it does not provide an accurate calculation of how much money the applicant typically has on hand. So as a hint, inflated assets will result in an unsupported GUS underwriting recommendation. Under the If Net Equity Select Property data field, if a property is entered in the REO Property Information section of this application page with the Property Address section completed, this data field will allow the drop-down box to display the address where the user can select the property associated with this asset. And in description, this is a free text data field that will allow the user to enter any important notes or explanations regarding the entered asset. Let's review some asset tips. Assets are not required to be entered into GUS. Some lenders do not include assets in GUS in order to obtain the most conservative underwriting recommendation. However, while assets are not required to be listed on this application page, the income earned from eligible assets must be included on the eligibility application page. Assets that must be considered for the annual income calculation to determine program eligibility may be reviewed in 3555.152D as well as Handbook Chapter 9. Do not inflate or overstate the assets in GUS. All data entries must be supported with documentation and acceptable calculations. Assets are compensating factors. Therefore, it is imperative that accurate data entry is done. Some asset types will not reflect in the reserve or funds to close calculations. Handbook Chapter 9 includes explanations. And please do not worry about funds to close negatively affecting a GUS underwriting recommendation. Verification of funds to close is a lender's responsibility. USDA is aware that if the lender does not have eligible funds to close, that the lender will not close the loan. The REO Property Information section will allow lenders to enter information regarding an applicant's property that is or will be pending sale, sold, rented, or retained. USDA offers a separate training module for completing the REO Property Information page. Please refer to this training for full details. As the user scrolls down the application page to the liability sections, there is a red message that states liabilities may be auto-populated from the credit and underwriting page. For loans that are imported into GUS, the liabilities listed in the lender's LOS system will be populated onto this application page. Please ensure that every single open account on the credit report is reflected in the liabilities. Now, users may choose to delete all liabilities that imported over and then select the auto-populate option when ordering a new credit report or reissuing an existing credit report into the GUS application from the credit and underwriting page. This will ensure that all open liabilities are displayed in this section of the GUS application. For loans that are manually entered into GUS, it is recommended that users skip manually entering the liabilities. Instead, select the auto-populate option when ordering the credit report into GUS. This will ensure that every open liability on the credit report will be reflected on this application page. Regardless of which liability entry method you choose, the first liability section is mortgage liabilities, including home equity, loans of credit, or HELOC, or mortgages. If an applicant is currently liable for a mortgage obligation, it must be entered into the GUS liabilities. Users must ensure the following are completed. Account owner. Select the applicant responsible for the liability. And liability type. There are two options. Is it a home equity line of credit, or is it a mortgage loan? Select the appropriate type. Balance. The current balance due as reported on the credit report or supporting documentation may be entered. Monthly payment. Enter the applicable monthly payment. Creditor name. Enter the creditor name. And notes. This is a free text data field that will allow the user to enter any notes that are important for the underwriter and the USDA review person to know. For example, an entry of sold or pending sale will alert the reviewer of the status of the property. Under Select Property, when the REO Property Information section is properly completed, the address for this mortgage liability may be selected from the drop-down box. On the left side of each mortgage liability, the following options are available to remove the payment from the ratio analysis. The selection of either option must be fully documented. Omit. For example, if the property has been rented for 24 months or more, it would qualify to be omitted from the ratios. And also paid by close. Properties that are sold or are pending sale and will close before the proposed guaranteed loan may select the paid by close option. If additional mortgage liabilities exist, select Insert More Mortgage Liabilities. If the user wishes to delete all data entries, they may select Delete All Mortgage Liabilities. Applicants that will retain a property that has no mortgage liability must have the continuing monthly debts of real estate taxes, insurance, special assessments, HOA fees, etc. included in the debt ratios. This is accomplished by manually entering these debts in the Other Liabilities section of this application page. When these items are manually entered into GUS, an underwriting recommendation of Accept will not require a downgrade. The second set of liabilities is Other Liabilities. The user must complete the following data fields. Account owner. Select the account owner from the drop-down box. Liability type. Select the appropriate liability type from the drop-down box. This selection will typically capture revolving accounts, such as credit cards, installment debts, collections, etc. Balance. Enter the balance on the credit report or from the supporting documentation. Monthly payment. Enter the monthly payment. Creditor name. List the creditor for the account. And notes. This is a free text data field where the user can enter important or useful information for the underwriter and USDA. A few examples of an informative note would alert the reviewer to 1% of a student loan has been entered, or a collection was omitted because it is medical, or a liability was omitted because it was included in a bankruptcy in 2014. Those are a few useful examples. If a liability is eligible to be omitted from the debt ratios or it will be paid by close, users may select the applicable checkbox. Refer to 7 CFR 3555 and Handbook Chapter 10 and 11 for guidance regarding the omission of eligible debts. A distinction must be made between omit and paid by close. Omit is typically selected when the liability has already been paid in full by the applicant and there is documentation to support a zero balance, or the underwriter has determined the liability is not required to be paid in full as a condition of loan approval. Examples of omitting debts may include, but are not limited to, medical collections, evidence the debt is already paid in full, etc. Underwriting rationale and documentation will be retained as applicable and recorded in the permanent loan file. And finally, debts that are omitted will not be included in the debt ratio calculation. Paid by close is typically selected when 1. The liability will be paid in full at or before the guaranteed loan closes. The lender will retain documentation to support the exclusion of this debt from the ratios was accurate. 2. Funds required to pay these debts will be deducted from eligible cash reserves. And mortgage liabilities that will be paid by close typically have net equity entered in the asset section to support the payoff amount. And finally, debts that are marked paid by close will also be excluded from the ratio calculations. This slide displays an example of how not to code a liability. Do not select Omit and then declare in the Notes section that it will be paid by close. There is a paid by close option located next to the Omit button. By making these selections, the user has omitted the debt from the ratio calculations and avoided depleting cash reserves. This is incorrect data entry. Therefore, this loan would be released for correction by USDA to the approved lender for correct data entry. If additional liability data fields are needed, the user may select Insert More Other Liabilities. If the user wishes to delete all currently entered liability data, they may select Delete All Other Liabilities. The third and final liability section is additional expenses. The user must complete the following: Account Owner. Select the account owner from the drop-down box. And expense type. Select the applicable expense type. This section will typically capture alimony, child support, and additional expenses that must be included in the ratio calculations. Child care is listed as an expense type, but the payment of child care is not required to be included in the total debt ratio. GUS has been designed to capture all of the data entries that are available to users in their LOS systems. Underwriters may include any debt in the ratios that they feel is a significant impact to repayment ability. Monthly payments. Enter the applicable monthly payment. Months left to pay. Enter the number of payments remaining for this debt. And notes. This again is a free text data field where the user may enter any important notes for the underwriter and USDA. If additional data fields are required, the user may select Insert More Additional Expenses. If the user wishes to delete or omit any individual additional expenses, they may select DEL for delete or omit as applicable. Please sign up for GovDelivery messages. USDA sends out origination, including GUS and servicing messages to alert lenders of new publications, clarifications, and additional program updates. Thank you for supporting the USDA Single Family Housing Guaranteed Loan Program. We appreciate the opportunity to help you serve more rural home buyers. This will conclude the training module. Thank you and have a great day.